Hi everyone, my name is Aaron. I'm going to explain the prisoner's dilemma to you. So first, in order to understand the prisoner's dilemma, we're going to have to understand a little bit of what game theory is. So what game theory is it is the study of strategic decision making, and by strategic we mean situations in which a decision maker must consider how others will respond to their actions. So in short, game theory is really useful in determining outcomes of situations that involve multiple decisions being made on the expectation of how other people are going to react to the choices that you make. So in order to explain the prisoner's dilemma, we're going to first go through a couple of definitions, and then we're going to use a real-world example. So first is the dominant strategy. So dominant strategy refers to the strategy that yields the best outcome for an individual in the scenario, regardless of the strategies that are being chosen by other people. And the Nash equilibrium is what happens when individuals talking with one another, interacting with one another, each choose their best strategy given the strategies chosen by other people. So we're going to use the example of the ending of the Titanic, where Jack and Rose have to sacrifice, one of them is sacrificing one another so the other can live. In this case, if we look at the payoff matrix here, if Jack stays on the door and Rose stays on the door, then hypothetically they'll both lose a leg due to not being able to orient themselves properly on the boat, and their legs get hypothermia and they lose a leg. However, if Jack leaves the door and Rose stays on the door, then Jack dies and Rose lives. And if Rose leaves the door and Jack stays on the door, then Jack will live and Rose will die. And if both Jack and Rose leave the door together and decide to sacrifice themselves for some reason, then they will both die. Now, in this scenario, the dominant strategy would be for Jack to try to stay and Rose to leave, or for Rose to try to stay and Jack to leave so that both of them could live. However, the Nash equilibrium would be that both of them would stay on the door and they would lose a leg. So what are the impacts of using things like game theory, and how does it relate to welfare economics? Well, when it comes to oligopolies that have impacts on markets, the more oligopolies prioritize self-interest, the less they price fix and maximize total surplus, meaning that the price will go down for buyers. However, the more that oligopolies collude together and price gouge and price maximize, the higher prices buyers pay. I hope this explanation was a little bit more helpful in explaining game theory and the prisoner's dilemma. Here are my references, and goodbye.